Thanks everyone for coming. We have a session today on building ecosystem health metrics with open data sources. Should be accessible for anyone, whether you're super deep in the data, kind of more of a data fan, or just getting started and like pretty pictures of charts on screens. This is all kind of based on our work building within the Optimism superchain ecosystem, but should be applicable for any L2, any wide ecosystem, maybe even like any business. So yeah, so with that, we will jump in. So I'm Michael, data analyst at OP Labs. Been there for about 3 years, seen the wide range of things from one chain apps you can count on your hands to now where we're at with many chains and trying to keep track of everything.
And I'm Chuxin. I've been working at OP Labs for 2 years and has always been navigating on-chain data. Oh, so for today's agenda, I'm going to talk about what is ecosystem health, what are we going to build. There's going to be a metric tear down so you know all the metrics that we're going to talk about. And then we'll spend some time building in the workshop. And at the end of the session, we're going to talk about the collective data vision. And we'll have some Q&A time for everyone as well. Oh, so before we start, I would like to start with a multi-chain universe little trivia time. So I'm gonna get some hands. How many chains are there? Anyone has any guess? Just feel free to raise your hand, shout, anything. How many chains? 200? It's close. There's more. Any other answers? It's more than 200. Give me a wild number. Say 500. Oh, it's lower, but okay. We're still so this data is as of like end of last month, which is October. There's already 322 chains according to DeFi Llama. So guess how many rollups are there? Give a number. There's already a reference number now. Anyone shout? 200. Interesting. Actually is much lower. So according to DeFi Llama is about 38 and also L2Beat is about 48. So different providers. Last question, just guessing. How many chains are part of the superchain ecosystem? So it's another subset, but give it a number again, please. Anyone? 30? Is what you're saying, Lizzie? Okay, so it's actually 21. We have this data available in a Google Sheet with all the superchain ecosystem members. So now we're going to talk about what is ecosystem health, and I'll hand it to Michael.
Yeah, so how we think about measuring the health of our ecosystem, the whole superchain L2 space, can kind of a very simple question to kind of try to answer is, are we doing well? This being about chains seems like a very easy question to answer. But it actually becomes super difficult, and we'll go into a little bit why. One, we just went through how many chains there are. Super hard to keep up. Who can name 300 chains? You can barely name 20 chains. A lot of things going on. Even mentioned, you used to be able to count chains and apps on your hand. Now, absolutely no way to. So a lot of information to try to keep up with. Second, there's often a gap between what you think you're measuring, what you're actually measuring. I think one tangible example I can give, when I first started at Optimism, trying to find what things users might be interested in, decided to take all the users on L2, take those addresses, look what they did on L1, try to get some understanding of what they were using. At the time, we saw some real-world asset apps. We saw some like fixed straight lending things, and I made this assumption like, oh, it's all these fancy DeFi things. That's what these users want. That's what you should kind of go after and build. Turned out those were all just apps that hadn't launched a token yet. So I thought I was looking at what users wanted to do. It was actually looking at people, doing their farming activities. And this is actually kind of a dangerous assumption to make, especially for making decisions or figuring out where to invest engineering resources, product resources. If it's based on thinking you know something that is actually not what you think it is, yeah, it could put you down a bad path. So ideally, we kind of know what we're measuring and don't get fooled by other things. Third, I think throughout the week there's been a few kind of data sessions, data conferences. I've heard a lot of people say like, this is the metric that we should be looking at. Everything else is bad. This is the one. And depending on who you talk to, what their perspectives are, like what areas they focus in, there'll be many different ideas of what doing well is. And the first question, are we doing well? Many different ways someone could look at that and make that judgment. And so with that, I'll go into a few of these ways of what doing well could mean. I think our approach is generally, start with some intent we want to measure, like something we think is healthy for our ecosystem, and then what metrics are kind of proxies for that. So a few of them, very early on, we're like user engagement and adoption. You'll hear that everywhere. Some sample metrics, transactions, people doing stuff, gas used, compute stuff, and then users. So a good outcome of focusing on these things is, you scale your chains, you reduce fees, let people do way more stuff on chain, you grow, all good. Bad outcome is if you're just focusing on making the transaction number go up, all kinds of programs, things you can do to artificially inflate that, potentially leads to some short-term outcomes, and kind of wasted time there. The asterisk is on users, a soapbox for another talk, but no one knows what a user is. We could talk about that later, I guess. Hopefully getting there soon. Second one, so, talk about the demand side, what about the supply side? Developers building things on chain, mind share, people coming to you to build their cool applications. So some metrics here, on-chain contract deployments, maybe look at GitHub for stuff a little further upstream. Good outcome, build good developer tools, kind of simple there. Bad outcome is you're just like, give me as many contracts as I can get, kind of lose sight of, quality or long-term sustainability there. And yeah, so that's a bad outcome there. Economic activity is another one, total value locked, so it could be, tokens deposited into finance applications, or any kind of volumes like transfers, trades, things like that. Devcon's rough on the voice. So good outcome, address real would be good. Real world financial opportunities. Bad is, again, short-term liquidity. Stuff comes in, stuff comes out, low retention, right back where you started. Financial performance, the last one we'll go through. Why go through all this complication? Why don't you just look at, are you making money? Are you making fees? We already have some metrics for that, kind of well known across any industry, what revenue, profit are. Good outcome, general measure, product market fit, people willing to pay, you can measure that. Bad outcome is so focused on that, you're like, keep fees high, money's coming in, like we're good. Could be at the expense of user experience, and people churn, you lose them. So a theme here, each indicator has some good intent to start off with. Measure something useful, you can tell yourself it's all good, but over-optimizing for one has some bad outcomes. So yeah, so we kind of like realize there's not like one key metric for everything, so we had to figure out how we move forward with that. So what do we do? Chuxin, help us.
Next slide. Okay, so this is kind of like an ecosystem health metrics framework that we've been using to approach the dashboard that we're going to show you later. But generally, you want to start as kind of like a funnel analysis, and you want to think about what are the drivers or kind of the levers that you can pull for the ecosystem. And I think this framework actually not just only apply to chains, but also apps or basically any other product you want to build. And then we want to come to the network effect. So, for example, like brand, product, decentralization, how is it going to impact your network? And here, as a chain operator, what you want to look at is, as you grow the chain, you want to attract developers, more developers building apps, and they will attract users, and more chains come in. So this is a flywheel effect. And the proxy that we want to use to measure this flywheel effect is on-chain usage. And this is not a static metric, because I think everything is evolving, and when there are better metrics coming, we just measure them. And right now, we're just using transactions and gas usage as a proxy for on-chain usage. And at the very bottom of the funnel is just revenue, which is measuring the sustainability, but the impact of that is usually seen at, I think, at the very last. So before we share anything more, does anyone have any questions? Are you guys still following? Don't be shy. Okay, I see some people nodding, so we can keep going. So yeah, now I'm gonna introduce what we build, and I'll hand it over to Michael again.
Yeah, so some of you may have seen this. So kind of going with the theme of there's no one metric, no one big number we really want to focus on. We decided we have many things that we think are potentially good proxies for ecosystem health. So rather than over-optimizing for one, they all matter in context of each other. You see one metric going up, one going down, that tells you something. Everything going in the same direction may give you more confidence that you could be seeing like real growth or real health of your ecosystem. So this is like one view into there. Don't worry about what each metric is now. We'll go through some of that now. But I think there is something too. You'll see like a lot of people will make things or make statements about like what are your incentives that drives what you do. And so I think there's some role when you're building either your ecosystem dashboard or whatever your source of truth is or what people are looking at as the canonical thing they rally around. Whatever metrics you put on here in a way will drive what people are doing, what they're optimizing for. So it is a very powerful kind of role you play here, which is why it's important to, or at least our view is it's important to show many, many, many things so you're not creating some unknown outcomes. Everyone wants to be the top of a leaderboard, so it's very important, how that is sorted.
So now we're going to quickly go through each of the metrics in detail. We won't spend too much time on it because that's not the most important part. But yeah, the first metrics that I want to show here is transactions. And then, so it's very self-explanatory. And the reason we choose transaction is because it touches, like every participant on the blockchain would touch transaction for one reason or the other. And but the transaction by itself doesn't really mean anything if you don't put it into the context, because it can go up for various reasons. There may be bots, there might be that the macro trend is just going up in general. So you want to compare that to the market or the market share that you want to measure against. And anyone can define what your metrics is. For example, like you can just say, I want to measure against L2, or I want to measure against the market share as the whole crypto ecosystem. Or it could be vertical wise as well. So that's something that that's something you can kind of like define what the market is looking like. And you want to know like, oh, am I growing? Is my growth outpacing the industry versus just like I'm growing because I'm riding the trend? And then usually when we see this like kind of transaction numbers going up, the natural question that follows is, where is the transaction growth coming from? And we have a very nice dashboard that kind of like tells us where the transaction is coming from by the project or the contract. And the very important thing here is about the contract mapping, because without proper like labeling, it's just really hard to understand what's behind the meaning of each of those like hex code. So this is just one example of how we kind of like dissect what's happening in each of the chains. Next one I'm going to talk about is the L2 gas use per second. And this is just a metrics that measures like how much compute a chain is doing. And usually this number will go hand in hand with like transactions. But there are also examples where you will see like the gas per second going up and sometimes plateaued, but the transaction number is not going up. And that's because usually, for example, on any of the L2s, when gas per second hits the limit, the network will be congested and people don't want to pay because it's expensive and transaction number will actually go down. So this is just one example that you can't just look at one metrics and say something because you can have lots of stories behind. Next one I'm going to quickly talk about is the app TVL and also the assets on chain. The difference between these two numbers is just that usually I think we kind of like define the app TVL as the economic value that is all the liquidity that is locked inside the ecosystem. And then on the other hand, the asset on chain is just like the sum of any kind of tokens that is locked in the canonical bridge, and also any of the native tokens that is on L2. And the other one that we show is just collective revenue, and the revenue definition, at least like we're using here for the superchain ecosystem, is any chains that contribute maybe like 2.5, the higher of the 2.5% of the sequencer revenue or the 15% of the net on-chain value. And the last one is governance, which is something that we also focus a lot. And here we're just measuring like the total votable OP supply. The reason that we care about it is because it's about captured resistance, and we also want to see like actors acting rationally to make economical decisions. There can be lots of analysis that comes behind this, looking at concentration of voting power, behaviors of voting, etc., for the Optimism Collective. And back to Michael.
Yeah, so now that we've gone through all this, you can kind of see some of the intents we wanted to, view as health for the ecosystem. We mentioned those all before, and the metrics that we chose to represent those. I think another good kind of case study here is if you were, we talked about over-optimizing for one thing or not. You can kind of see how all of these charts may trend in similar directions, different directions. One obvious kind of divergence that you may have seen as we went through is, why are transactions going up, gas use going up, collective revenue is just, kind of straight down. And that's kind of like been an interesting case study. I think we saw after EIP 4844, the whole blob thing that launched in March of this year, transaction costs on L2s went like straight down, but great for user experience, way cheaper to do things on chain. But then we saw a lot of these L2 chains hit congestion of what they could actually process on their chain, and that led to fees going up, prices skyrocketing, opportunity for users to go churn. So where the decisions were made to try to keep transaction fees down, let there be way more transactions that could happen on chain, you did see revenue go down in that sense. So if you're only optimizing for that, you'd be like, this is crazy, what are we doing? But if you're like kind of taking a longer term lens, looking at ecosystem growth, this may be the things you see to make it seem like a rational decision there. And so some questions we often get are, made a nice dashboard, like why does it matter? I think some influence that we see is there's it's a source of truth, rallying point for the whole collective. Hard enough within one company to do this. Then we have a whole bunch of stakeholders in the ecosystem. There's like the labs company, we both are, foundation, teams running chains, delegates voting on governance, grants councils, all these kind of things. Huge, long list of people who make decisions within the collective. Helpful to have one canonical source of truth versus I heard this here, I heard this there. So it helps kind of bring some order to our decentralized chaos that exists. Growth opportunities, so whether it's the raw number or something of looking at how you're comparing versus total industry, some of these market share metrics, could open up some growth opportunities. Like where are you lagging, where are you leading? Could open up areas of where to go deeper. And like we kind of briefly touched on with going a layer under transactions into what contracts are being used, what's driving that, opens up opportunities for future research. See something moving or see something changing. Why is that happening? Leads to one question to 5 questions to 10 questions, and then you're going deep there. But hopefully helps you prioritize towards the most impactful things versus what may seem kind of interesting at the time. In general, goal setting. Whatever your targets are, it's helpful to have this to rally behind. And I think you'll often see sometimes numbers change or metrics change. Kind of represents where the direction we're all going is trending towards. Very briefly, so this is a public dashboard here. I'll not go back through everything here. So I'll have links in GitHub as I'll show soon. How we built this very briefly using a bunch of public APIs that exist. Hold this down here. Some chain indexers we use. Not a complicated system. Database table, business logic. Building metrics, joining stuff, and then the dashboard there. Okay, so now we're before the fun stuff. You have to listen to us talk. Any other kind of questions, comments on what we've gone through so far? Yeah, go ahead.
Any analysis for secondary market activity on the swap value?
I can repeat the question. It was like analysis on secondary markets for swap value. I think that's like maybe goes into the economic. Oh, sorry, is it something different? Oh, locked value. So you mean secondary? What do you mean by secondary markets of locked value?
Values token values locked up in contracts, basically have secondary markets on top of that.
Oh, yeah.
Before the contract actually pays out to the trust.
Yeah. So it's like some nuance on top of like value being locked. I think there's something that's interesting that we've tried to do is so use DeFi Llama as our like total value locked in apps source. And there's maybe it's similar, but an issue there with kind of like double counting, like you can deposit here, do this, and you make like one token represented 700 times. So at least like DeFi Llama does a good job of trying to exclude that double counting, which helps. Maybe not totally related, but maybe it's in like the business logic segment of like, is that what you described, like good or bad? Do you want to filter it out or include it or call it out as being important? I think definitely different perspectives, whether you're like a generalized chain ecosystem, like a specific version, like a specific app. Hopefully it answered a little bit, but we can talk maybe after about it too. anyone else? Yeah, go ahead.
I think my question is how accurate, like how do you like know that your data that you show is accurate?
Yeah, good prompt for some stuff coming soon. So yeah, so there's I guess like a few different data sources, but one is I mean like general trust in the ones that we do use, like ones that are the examples of like the DeFi Llama, Gorilla Pi, L2Beat groups that do the curated data. So we just pull that raw result. There's an element of like trust in there too. But I think as well, like there's, if their data was wrong, it's like that's no one would use it, I guess. But yeah, it's definitely like a point of even like general data quality. Something pops up, it looks weird. Figure out, like, go deeper into it. I think for a chain indexer perspective, like we're building things that are checks to make sure like are all the blocks there, does the amount of gas match up, and things like that too. But I guess trusted sources and verify stuff, I guess, when it comes up as well. But yeah, a good point. It'd be bad if it was wrong. Yeah. Anything else? Cool. Fun stuff time. So kind of a workshop here. If you have a laptop with you, we can start building on some things together. But if not, no worries. Like, find a friend next to you, and we can go build some cool charts together. So finding out the best way to navigate people to a GitHub repo. There's a QR code, but phones to computers. Apple's done some stuff. It's kind of cool. We'll see if that works too. So we have like our OP Analytics repo. We build everything in. It's getting cleaner, but there is a dedicated folder for demos, Devcon 2024 here, and try to find that. There's some optional work for if you're like beginner intermediate with SQL or Python, you can jump in and see the code. But we're going to go through what exists there too. And for everyone, we'll get to a spot where you can make pretty charts with curated data. So maybe give a few minutes for that and walk around if people need help doing things. Is anything? Cool.
And once you get a QR code, there are two ways you can do it. If you are very familiar with GitHub, you can just do git clone and copy the entire repo. We'll make constant updates there. But if you just want the demo folder, you can just go to like download directory, github.io, put the QR code link there, and then you can just get the folder in a zip file. Do we also have a link for the? Oh, we don't have the link. Or we'll show the link later. Okay, yeah. Back to the QR code.
And then fun stuff. Maybe get like a minute, and we can kind of walk through what is in this repo while people pull it up too in a minute. Okay, maybe assume it's enough time. If you can't, don't want to fork or clone, like on the GitHub UI, you can probably see enough to kind of scroll through anyway. So we can talk a little bit about what you'll see in there before we run wild and build stuff. Okay. So I'll walk through a few data sources that we use. Curated some scripts kind of to go run through now. Shall we join them together? Build new ecosystem charts and potentially do, call out some of the interesting stuff people go build. So what you'll see in this repo, general README with links. You'll see two at the top that are, we had like a Google sheet up now with the end result data that you can just use if you want to skip to that part, as well as the links what we just showed here before. We've kind of curated here is for each of these like APIs we're using, so DeFi Llama, Gorilla Pi, L2Beat right now, some Python files, functions in there. was told it was boring to go through those, so we'll skip over those and go through some notebooks that we're using to pull the data, join it together, kind of show a walkthrough of how this all kind of comes together. Then, yeah, get to the final data CSVs that we can then build cool things with. So walk through some of these data sources. Similar stuff that you'll see on our health dashboard, but just for what comes through here at raw. So default is what we use for the total value locked metric. Here's our chart for across the whole crypto ecosystem. And if you break it down by chain, this is the actual data that we pull from their API. What is very cool about this is it gives you a total crypto ecosystem wide view, not just L2s, not just EVMs. Has everything on here. You see top 3: Ethereum, Solana, Tron, Bitcoin farther down, a bunch of other ecosystems as well. So it is good to kind of compare not just within the Ethereum world, but everything else outside as well. Other one we'll show is L2Beat. I think what's cool you'll see here is there's like a similar kind of approach of showing multiple metrics together. What's useful here is just like a huge wide list of layer 2 chains. We see like total assets on chain, total transactions. What's useful here, there's a lot of metadata for each chain too. So some element of like security level with the stages there, what type of chain it is, what stack it is, all these kind of things that are useful. You'll see for showing some sample charts later, but hopefully it sparks some ideas. Third one is Grow the Pie, another layer 2 specific one. Smaller list of chains, but definitely has a much kind of wider set of metrics. So again, I was like pulling these today. I was like, oh cool, more metrics all kind of together up top, and then a whole wide range of stuff. But yeah, from their API we pull all these metrics as well, so you could use them and pull them all together. So that's what you'll see. Steps here: download the data. Don't expect you to go through the code here. Call these API functions. Then we try to join it together. I think one thing interesting to call out here is like eventually it'd be nice to figure out some like interoperability between all these kind of data sources. Whether it could be some use chain names differently, some use chain IDs differently. But do the best we can with some of this stuff now. And then the end result you'll finally see is like processing it, making these metrics. So group by month now, average, sum, all the fancy stuff you want to do. But you'll see like most of the metrics that we show on that health dashboard, transactions, on-chain profit, all these things come in through here. And then I think it's cool, this like big CSV of data. We join all together. We have all these metrics we talked about. We see all this cool kind of metadata that we can kind of slice things by. And what's kind of interesting too is like our experience building stuff, we kind of filter this to optimism. But there's definitely a lot more to think about from an Ethereum-wide perspective, whether it's like the L1 and all L2s, maybe like a certain stage of decentralization for these L2s, but yeah, a lot of different kind of filters and things you can do. So kind of inspiration, some things I was playing around with a little earlier. Take the whole ecosystem, show transactions per day, cut it by L1, L2, L3, using these data sources here. It was kind of cool to be like, we know that after March, transactions increased. We see like L1 is always kind of flat as expected. L2 start to grow. What was surprising to me is seeing from like March, April as well, how much the L3 started to cut into share of all activity. So maybe you have some approach looking at health where you want to look at any one of these kind of subsets. But that was kind of cool, kind of fun thing. Second one, so like from L2B, we can get like the current latest stage of each chain. And kind of a cool joining experience is Grow the Pie has gas per second. So plotted those two together. And this is just the latest stage of each chain. Like you can probably go back historically if you wanted to. But it was interesting to see like, a majority of gas used now is like currently stage 0 chains. I know some have plans to go to stage 1, but I'm sure you can make a case to say like, let's look at stage 1 plus. I think L2Beat made that case, earlier at this Devcon. So there could be a case where if you're looking at health of the L2 ecosystem, maybe this is a split you want to do. But now, if you go through, if you're in the GitHub repo, you'll see the link to this Google Sheet with all those. There's like a tab for the raw data there. So your turn if you want to go build and poke around in some charts. We use Google Sheets because it's kind of easy to share stuff, but definitely any analysis charting tool of your choice, whatever you enjoy. I think we've used like Streamlit, Plotly, Flourish, a bunch of other cool stuff. And I think, do we have stuff for this?
Oh, yes. So We have some special OP swags to give away, which is super limited. We have 3 tote bags there, and we are really looking forward to seeing some really interesting, nice charts, insights. You don't have to build a full dashboard. Use the data, show something nice, and yeah, we'll have 3 tote bags. Yeah, I think maybe let's give it another 30 minutes for people to play around. We can walk around, answer questions. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll come back in 20 or so minutes. But yeah, we'll walk around, let people kind of go build stuff. Cool. Yeah, and I'll walk through a little bit too, just pulling up the data here. So yeah, hopefully you can all find this link. This is like the raw data tab that I showed earlier. So you can build pivots on this, download it, whatever you want to do. The little sample tables we went through earlier. But also if you're in the GitHub, you can download the raw CSVs and put it in wherever. Yeah, we'll be walking around. All right. We'll come back here. All right. I think we'll go through things everyone kind of put together after towards the end. But let's go through into some other kind of close-up thoughts and things. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining, participating. It was cool walking around and seeing everything.
So I'm going to wrap it up with the collective data vision. So as you can tell, cross-chain analysis is still as hard as cross-chain messaging, and data source interoperability is also very important. I'm just going to highlight here, and also completeness as well. So it's really hard to connect the data from so many different open source data providers, and also chains have inconsistent names, like Optimism, OP Mainnet, or whatever. And also not everyone uses chain ID. The other one, we're going to talk about some of the specializations that we wish to exist as open data sets, such as whether something is an active human, is that a real user? Yeah, like you can use any trust algorithm or maybe World ID or anything else. Also, active developers, there's so many different ways to measure a developer. Is it just like an on-chain address, or is it going to be GitHub users or something else? There's also some interesting discussion about cross-chain activity and also asset transfer, especially where when everyone is trying to develop interoperability across the chains, and also continue building on the chain ecosystem level data. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up with this workshop for 3 takeaways. One is, why should you build? So metrics matter in context. This is one of the takeaways I would like everyone to have. So don't just take everything for granted. When you see a metrics, be skeptical. Is that real or not? Always question that. And also, you want to always have a holistic view of the market, and think about things in the ecosystem-wide, like why certain things are going up and how is it doing in the ecosystem. And also, metrics are not static. They're always evolving. There's no metric that is perfect, so keep building on that. The next takeaway is about some of the open data sources that we wish we could have, including your own ecosystem, real uses, stablecoins, decentralized governance, cross-chain assets, and also any other emerging trends. And also, everything we build is open to anyone. You probably have seen the OP Analytics repo, and we've been constantly updating that, so stay tuned for more to come. Oh yeah, and one more thing, if you're staying until the end. So this is another QR code that we have, and we have this Optimism superchain raw on-chain data that anyone can get access to in Google BigQuery. So click that and subscribe. Right now we have all the superchain data sets here, including blocks, transactions, logs, and traces. So the dream is just to select star from the superchain. Right now it's still work in progress, and we only have there's no promise of latency or anything. It's just still testing, but I would like to welcome everyone to just try it out, give us feedback. The data set right now is only in October and September, but this is the most complete superchain data set that you can get. And yeah, go wild with that. Do we have anything else? Okay, that's all, but we are here for questions, and also we're gonna, for anyone who wants to get the tote bag, raise your hand, show us the dashboard, and yes, yeah.
Okay, so I'll read the question. I'll read the question out. What do you guys do day to day at OP Labs? Work with protocols? If so, what tools do you use to analyze protocol-specific data? Yeah, I could answer wide for this. Yeah, so I think it's I'd say kind of a bunch of stakeholders. There's some internally, whether it's our product teams, business development teams, growth teams. So a lot of kind of projects with them. I think the main kind of questions there is going deeper into what's driving on-chain activity, or what kind of things we see as potential kind of growth areas. I'd say we do kind of work mostly with beyond that, other kind of chain teams. Some of them do have data teams that we work closely with. Some don't, and use kind of stuff that we produce. So we started doing a weekly-ish kind of like Superchain Health report that we share within OP Labs with all the other kind of chain teams as well. That kind of goes through our just like rundown, kind of what happened on the week, like what's going up, what's going down, our takes there, any things to look out for. So just trying to like use our data as a way to kind of like show the reality to the ecosystem. It's easy to see how many transactions there were, but it's hard to kind of be like go to the next step and be like, what does that mean? And how do you kind of go on beyond that? Okay. Anything else? This is a long session. That's cool. Cool. I guess we can leave it at that. Like we said, I think we'll go around and look at some charts and things, and beyond that. Oh, there's a hand. Oh, there's not a hand. You do have a hand. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I don't know. Cool. Yeah. Thanks everyone for coming. I think we have some time left in this room, so we can walk around and keep talking about stuff. Yeah. Thanks everyone.